Okay, hello and thanks for joining this webinar about NIS2. So let's just wait a minute for everyone to join and then we will start. While we are waiting for other people to join, just let me know where you're joining from. So if you can let me know the city and the country where you're joining from. So I'm joining from Zagreb, Croatia, and how about you? You can send me this message through your question pane or your chat window. Okay, while I'm waiting for your answers, just a couple of notes. First, we are recording this webinar and so you'll be able to watch it from the same page, basically where you registered for this webinar. So if you registered on Advisera website, then you'll see the recording on the same page where you registered. And if you're watching this webinar through LinkedIn or through YouTube, basically it will be on the same page where you are watching the live webinar now. And you'll be able to download the presentation deck from this webinar. And at the end of the webinar, I'll let you know actually how you can download this presentation deck. So please stick to the end of the webinar and you'll be able to do this. Okay, so I think we can start now. So welcome to this webinar, what is NIS2 and how to comply with it. My name is Dejan Kosutic and I'm the main ISO 27001 NIS2 and DORA expert at Advisera. Advisera is a company that makes compliance easy to understand and simple to use of all of these frameworks. This webinar today is streamed through Zoom, also through LinkedIn live events and YouTube live, and it will last approximately 45 to 60 minutes. It really depends on how many questions you send me. And by the way, please do send me as many questions as you want, because this will make the webinar much more interesting and actually easier for me. It's easier if I actually answer your questions rather than speak something, let's say, theoretically. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. And so why is this topic important? So it's important because NIS2 is mandatory for actually roughly 110,000 companies across European Union. And as you probably know, this is a mandatory cybersecurity regulation or directive for critical infrastructure companies. So basically it covers, I would say, quite a lot of sectors, and I'll explain actually these sectors in one of my slides. And what I'll explain in the webinar today are basic facts about not only NIS2 but also about these local laws and regulations that will be published based on NIS2. And I'll also explain you these compliance steps. So if you're in the scope of NIS2, what are the steps that your company needs to take to actually become compliant? And yes, this webinar is intended for anyone that is in charge of NIS2 compliance or anyone interested in this topic. So both for security officers, for consultants, for students, scholars, so anyone that is really interested in this topic. All right, so let me go to this slide. Well, basically, you'll see that one of my main, let's say, messages today is really that NIS2 directive, being a top-level document, is rather simplistic. You'll see it's not very complicated. It's pretty straightforward, pretty short. But when it comes to local NIS2 laws, so basically laws that EU countries will be publishing based on NIS2, then this is much more complex. And also what adds to this complexity is this CIR, this is Commission Implementing Regulation number 2690, which also specifies certain, let's say, mandatory things for companies that are in NIS2 scope. So these things are actually complicating things. So again, NIS2 directive is rather simplistic. These other things are pretty adding to this complexity. And of course, I'll explain this throughout my webinar. All right, so let's see the agenda. So in the first couple of slides, I'll go through these basic requirements from NIS2, from this CIR, and this transposition. So basically transposition means how EU countries will publish their own laws based on NIS2. Then I'll explain who needs to comply, so which companies are in NIS2 scope. Basically there are 3 criteria, and I'll show you these 3 criteria. And then I'll show you these steps in the implementation. There are something like 16, 17 steps that your company needs to take. And then a very common question is, if you can use ISO 27001 for NIS2 compliance. So in one slide, I'll show you kind of analysis of what can and what cannot be done with 27001. And also one topic about suppliers. So do suppliers need to comply with NIS2, and if not, what exactly they need to comply, and so on. So this is what I'll explain in one of these last slides. And of course, I'll have a Q&A session at the end. And yes, again, so if you have any questions, you do not have to wait for this Q&A session. You can actually ask your questions before this Q&A session. Okay, good. And yeah, if you want me to focus on any of these topics, if you want me to spend more time, then let me know. Send me this message through a chat window or through this question pane, and then just to let me know what you want me to focus on the most. Okay, so okay, I don't see it that anyone has sent any questions yet. Good. So let's move on then to the next slide. So let's go through some basics, right? So first of all, this NIS2 was published in 2022, but it's valid from October 2024. Yeah, this is a directive, basically meaning that this is a European Union's, let's say, law, which specifies a baseline for cybersecurity for these critical infrastructure companies. So again, a little bit later on, I'll explain exactly which companies need to comply. But first, I want to show you what are these requirements from NIS2. So so NIS2 itself has roughly 60 articles or so, but only 3 articles are relevant for companies that need to be compliant. So these are articles 20, 21, and 23. So I'll show you now how this looks like in reality. So here on the screen you can actually see this full text of NIS2 directive. You can see it on Advisera website, and by the way, we'll send you now the link so that you can actually access this full text yourself. If you joined actually this webinar through Zoom or through YouTube, then you'll be able to click this link right away, and it will open up in your browser. However, if you joined this webinar through LinkedIn, then because of some internal LinkedIn rules, you can't really click these links. And the workaround for this is that you simply copy the URL and paste it into your browser, and you'll be able to open the link. Okay, so let's see the full text of NIS2 directive. So here you can actually see, all the, let's see how many articles. Yeah, 46, so not 60. As I mentioned, only 3 articles are relevant. So article 20, 21, and 23. So let's click on it and see how this 20 looks like. As you can see, it's rather short. And basically it says that, management bodies of essential important entities need to approve risk management measures and oversee the implementation and held liable for infringements, right? So it basically gives a direct emphasis on the senior management responsibility for cybersecurity. That members of the management bodies need to require a training, and also offer similar training to all employees on regular basis. So basically here you can see it's a very big emphasis on this training. Okay, next article 21, cybersecurity risk management measures. So basically, companies need to take appropriate operational, organizational measures. So not only technical, it's also these organizational and operational ones. Yeah, let's go for these. All hazards approach for risk management. And here you can see then in this paragraph 2, you have these let's say, more detailed list on what companies need to comply with. And there you can see actually many things, but the problem here is that, it doesn't give you any details. It does give you, like, let's say, business continuity, backup, disaster recovery, crisis management, but it doesn't say anything more in detail. So it's very generic, okay? And again, it's there is nothing much here, right? Policies and procedures regarding the use of cryptography and where appropriate encryption. Again, nothing else. Okay, there is not much here in the rest of this article. And when we go for this article 23, you will see that there are more detailed requirements regarding reporting. I'm not going to go through this whole article because it's pretty detailed, but what I'll show you is that there are several types of reports that need to be sent. So early warning within 24 hours, then within 72 hours, companies need to send this incident notification. Then intermediary reports, and then final report 1 month after the initial incident. So several types of reports, and here, unlike these other articles, this one 23 is much more specific. It gives much more details. Who needs to be who this needs to be sent to, also what is the timing, and so on. So again, other than this incident reporting, everything else is pretty generic. Now let me go back to my presentation. There is, if you notice in the text, there is this distinction between essential and important entities. Well, this is a term which basically distinguishes between different types of organizations. In reality, in the implementation itself, there is not much difference between essential and important entities. Both of these types of entities need to implement cybersecurity under the same terms. The difference is usually in this responsibility of the senior management. Usually the fines are bigger for essential entities and a little bit smaller for important entities. Also, there are some more, let's say, bigger, I would say, responsibilities regarding this, doing the audits and these kind of things, but then this is something that is more specific, not so much for NIS2. This is specific for these local laws and regulations that I mentioned already in the introduction. Okay, now let's move on to this CIR Commission Implementing Regulation number 2024/2690. So let me again share the screen and go back here. So this is the full text of CIR. We'll send you now the link also through a chat window so that you can open this yourself. So basically what is the most important here is this annex. So I'll click direct to the annex, because here you will see a much more detailed explanation of what is required. Now, before I move into this into these details, I have to emphasize that this CIR is mandatory only for digital critical infrastructure companies. So if you're like a water utility, if you're, I don't know, telecom company, if you're, I don't know, road transport, if you're a transportation company, if you're in any of these entities which are not digital infrastructure, then this CIR is not applicable to your company. So this is only applicable to these types of companies that are categorized as digital infrastructure companies. And I'll show you in one of the next slides exactly what these digital infrastructure companies is, which companies are actually part of this digital infrastructure. But let me show you now what are the requirements here for in this CIR. So for example, you can actually see this 1.1 speaks about what is the how to write this top level policy for information for security of network and information systems. So as you can see here, you actually have much more details on what exactly you need to write to actually become compliant. Also roles, responsibilities, authorities. Again, pretty much details here on what needs to be exactly written here. Risk management policy, risk management framework. So basically, how do you write this methodology, right? You see even more text here. Compliance monitoring. independent review of information network security. So pretty much details here. So incident handling policy, monitoring and logging, event reporting, event assessment and classification, and so on. Business continuity crisis management, so business continuity disaster recovery plan, backup, and so on. So I'm not going to go through all of this because it's quite lengthy, but you now get the idea that this CIR is much more detailed. Okay, I have a question from Bob. What is the official website URL of the NIS2 directive so that I can keep up with any changes? I'll have to search for it, but it's on 𝗂𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀𝗲 website, so basically you can actually find it there. Let me see if there is already the link here on our website. Yeah, so basically here you can see, actually I'm not sharing the screen, so just let me switch the screen. Oh, I am sharing the screen. Okay, so here on this NIS2 page, you can actually see source, 𝗂𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀, and then you simply have to search for NIS2 directive and you'll find it there. Okay, so let me switch now to my presentation. Good. Now, the next thing that I wanted to basically present you is this transposition to the laws of EU countries. So it's like this. NIS2 directive is not directly applicable to companies. Rather, it's, I would say, mandatory for each EU country, so that each EU country can publish their own laws and regulations based on this particular directive. So NIS2 directive is a baseline, and then each EU country must publish their cybersecurity laws based on it. Now, out of 27 countries, something like 10 of them have already published this, so the majority of them still did not. And actually, out of these bigger countries in Europe, only Italy actually published their own NIS2 law, whereas, let's say, France or Germany still did not publish their laws. So basically, these bigger countries, most of these bigger countries are still have still not published. Now, I'll show you a page where you can actually see on Advisera website how you can actually track these countries that have published. So let me switch the screen. So here you can go for this page called NIS2, where to start, and we will send you now the link to this page. You'll see several articles here, but when you scroll down, you will actually see transposition to local laws, right? And then you can actually see the articles which explain how the local laws compare with NIS2. So Italy, Croatia, Belgium, Latvia, Lithuania, Greece. Also, a couple of other countries already published their laws, like Romania, Slovakia, and of course we'll also publish these articles as well. Okay, now let me move on to my presentation and go to the next slide. So let me give you a little bit of a taste on how this looks like. So basically, you know, how these local NIS2 laws actually look like when and where actually the problem here is. Basically, the biggest problem is that there is no unified approach. I mean, all of these countries are publishing the minimum that is set in NIS2, but then they add a lot of other things on top of this. Okay, now some countries add a little, right? Some countries add a lot, and I would say this is the biggest challenge, right? Because if a company wants to operate in, if a critical infrastructure company wants to operate in all of these countries, then you actually have the problem, because the thing is that the rules are not the same. There are differences in rules. And I'll actually show you now two extreme, so to say, cases. Belgium, which gives a more, let's say, not strict rules, and Croatia, which published very, very strict rules. So let me now show you and share the screen. So here I'm showing you this Belgium royal decree from June 9. Now, just to make sure, this was, by the way, original in French, and then I translated it directly here through this translation page, translation option in Edge. But nevertheless, you're seeing the English text, but in reality, this is actually the sources in French. But what is the point here is this, that Belgium has NIS2 law that is based, of course, on NIS2 directive, and then they publish this royal decree, and this royal decree actually defines more details on how NIS2 law needs to be implemented. Now, the key thing here, you will see, I scroll down to this section, Article 4 and 5, just let me see this. Okay, so Article 5 is here important. Basically, it says that companies that need to comply with NIS2, they can actually choose between the following reference frameworks. The reference framework, which is, let's say, explained in Article 4, or ISO 27001 standard. Now, basically, Belgium has published this cyber fundamentals, so CIFUN or cyber fundamentals framework, which basically means that if you are if you are a company in Belgium and you are in the NIS2 scope, you can actually choose between CIFUN and ISO 27001. So you can go with any of these two frameworks, and this means that you will be basically compliant with NIS2 law, right? So I would say that this is an example of a country which did not go into too much details explaining in the regulation itself, right? So I would say this is one extreme. Now the second extreme is Croatia. Again, you're watching the automatic translation. It's the source is in Croatian. So Croatia has published also NIS2 law, and then it published also this NIS2 regulation, which is based on NIS2 law. So this NIS2 regulation from Croatia actually defines in much more detail what you need to do to be compliant with Croatia's NIS2 law. Now let's just browse through it, and just to give you a taste of it. So as you can see, a lot of here, a lot of things that you have to comply. And this is not even the main part. So what is the main part is in the annex. So let me just go to the annex. As you can see, a lot here. No, but the main part is annex. Okay, annex 1, not the one. Annex 2. Okay, and here you can actually see these sections with particular cyber risk management measures, right? So the first one is about commitment and accountability, and then you can see lots of text here. And then even you have a table which you have to figure out, you know, what kind of company you are, and then what applies to you, what doesn't apply. So it's kind of a logic that you have to, you know, think through before you start complying. Management of software and hardware assets. Okay, and then quite a lot of assets, again, a table. Risk management, again, security of human resources, digital identities, and so on and so forth. So it goes. So as you can see, in Croatia's case, it's much more prescriptive, and it goes in much more detail. And even when you compare it with this CIR that I was showing you earlier, this Croatia's cybersecurity regulation is much more detailed. Okay. So if you're a company in Croatia that is in NIS2 scope, then you have, I would say, much more to do than if you were in, for example, Belgium. Now, from you know, all the other countries that we studied that already published and all the laws and regulations, they are typically somewhere between Croatia and Belgium. So Belgium being, let's say, the least demanding, Croatia being the most demanding, all the other countries are somewhere in between. So I can't say that you know, all of them have unique approach. All of them have, I would say, slightly a different approach. Okay, we'll send you now the links to these articles on Advisera website, which explain the Belgium approach and that explain this Croatia's this cybersecurity regulation. Okay, good. Let's go now back to my presentation. Right, now, the question is who needs to comply, right? And how do you actually determine? And by the way, this question of who needs to comply is basically almost the same, I would say, in all of these local laws and regulations. So all of these three criteria actually are valid for all these countries. Now, some of these countries actually added some specific requirements on their own, and this is well, for that you will actually have to read each and every law. But let's see what is common for all of them. Basically, there are three criteria. First of all, of course, a company needs to operate in European Union. It needs to sell its services or products within the European Union to be, let's say, eligible for being in the scope. And so it's not or, it's and. It needs to be more than 50 employees and more than 10 million euro in revenue. Okay. So, for example, if a company is, let's say, 30 employees, then it's not going to be in the scope of NIS2. And it needs to operate in any of these 18 sectors. And I'll switch now the screen and show you this article, and we'll actually send you now the link to this article, which companies need to comply with NIS2. But I'll switch the screen and actually show you how this looks like. So this is the article, and what is the most important, and you can actually see these three criteria here. What is the most important here is this a list of sectors, right? So 18 sectors. The first one is energy, and then you can see actually subsectors. So this is electricity, heating, cooling, oil, gas, hydrogen, transportation, air transportation, rail transportation, water transportation, roads. And then if you have banking and financial market infrastructures, although basically these two are listed here, but in fact they have to comply with DORA. DORA is a different EU regulation for cybersecurity, so they are listed here, but in reality NIS2 doesn't really apply to them. The DORA applies to these two sectors. Health, right? Healthcare providers, laboratories, research and development, medicinal products, so basically medical devices, drinking water, wastewater, digital infrastructure. So this is important because these companies here have to comply with this CIR that I was showing you earlier. So internet exchange point providers, DNS service providers, TLD, so top level domain name registries, domain name registration services, cloud computing service providers. Now this is I would say a not very good definition, because anything can be a cloud provider, but basically the decision is still not clear who will exactly be part of this cloud computing service providers, but these will probably be companies like AWS, Amazon, Azure, and so on. I know these are American companies, but still they provide services within European Union. So these type of companies that provide these kind of cloud services. Okay, also data service providers, content delivery network providers, trust service providers, providers of public electronic communication networks. So basically these are telecom companies, providers of publicly available electronic communication services. So all of these are also digital infrastructure. And then we have this ICT service management, business to business. So these are managed service providers and managed security service providers. They also have to be compliant with this CIR. And then public administration, and then space industry, postal and courier services, waste management, manufacture, production and distribution of chemicals, production, processing and distribution of food, manufacturing. So now you have this medical devices and so on. Also computer, electronic, optical products, electrical equipment, machinery and equipment, NEC, motor vehicles, other transportation equipment, digital providers. So providers of online marketplaces, online search engines, and social media, and research. So basically these are the companies that are within the scope. Now here in columns you actually have this explanation of who actually out of them needs to be compliant. So let me just scroll up. So micro and small organizations, so up to the 50 employees, here you see that these are not, that they do not need to comply. However, if there are mid-sized organizations, this means more than 50 employees and more than 10 million euro in revenue, then they are considered as important entity, right? And if there are large organizations, meaning there are more than 250 employees, then they are considered as essential entity. Okay, so this is the way to use this table and the way for you to figure out if you're in the scope or not. All right, let's move on back to my presentation. And yeah, let's go for these, let's say, methodology that we developed for complying with all of these regulations and directives and local laws and so on. Now, what is good about these steps is that you can actually use them with any law. So far we tested these steps against any local law, of course against NIS2, of course against CIR, and it fits. So again, it's good that because it's really applicable to any of these, let's say, use cases. So we suggest that you always start with this gap analysis because typically, you know, any of these companies will already have at least some of these things implemented, and once you complete this gap analysis, then you'll have a much better picture of what you actually have to do on top of what you already have. And we have this NIS2 gap analysis on our website, and it's a free tool, so you can actually use it to find out what you have to comply with, and we'll send you now the link to this gap analysis tool. Okay, the next step is to really work on this senior management support, because even though NIS2 or local NIS2 laws are mandatory, sometimes senior management is not going to, let's say, consider this important enough, but nevertheless, but especially because of this, you actually have to work on explaining to them that they're also responsible, and that not only the company can be fined, but also them personally can be fined if everything is not in order. Even though they are a senior management, they are not directly, let's say, involved in cybersecurity operations, but they're responsible for these things. This is something that you have to explain. Okay, moving on to the next step, you'll have to set up project management. Typically, these kind of projects are complex enough that you need a project manager, project team, a clear project plan document, especially sponsor from the senior management, these kind of things. And then you have to perform this initial training. So basically, you have to show to your employees what NIS2 requires, what are the requirements of local laws, and you have to start raising cybersecurity awareness. So this is something that is very important. Later on, I'll show you one tool that you can use for that purpose. And we'll also share with you now this link to an article which explains these 16 steps. So if you want to read in more details about these steps, then you can actually read this article. I see a question from Luisa. Will the updated NIS regulations 2018 scheduled for 2025 include all the components of NIS2, or will the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill include NIS2 components? So I'm not sure if I understand your question. So basically NIS2 was published in 2022 and it's valid from 2024. So this is basically how it is in the European Union. And so on top of this, you have this CIR and local NIS2 laws. So I'm not sure what exactly do you refer to here. And this Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, I assume that you refer to UK Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, which is again something that is relevant only for United Kingdom, and this is something that is not relevant. Okay, I see that you are now saying that NIS2 is not applicable to UK. So it is not, this is right. And to be honest, I didn't study the UK Cyber Resilience Bill, so I can't really give you any specific answer on that. Okay, good. Now, next step is to write this top-level policy. The top-level policy is something that is needed because you want to kind of set the main rules for who is going to control, who is going to be in charge of cybersecurity, what exactly needs to be done, and so on and so forth. So this is not this is something that that needs to be done before you actually start writing other policies and procedures. Then you have to define your risk management methodology. So basically how you're going to manage risks. How are you going to assess the impact, likelihood, these kind of things. And then you have to perform this risk assessment and treatment. So you have to find out what are the biggest risks and how you treat those risks using various controls. And then you should write this risk treatment plan. So basically this is the plan on how you intend to implement all of these security measures. Defining, the timing, the responsibilities, the budgets, and so on. The next step is really to start implementing all of these cybersecurity measures. And typically this is done by writing various policies and procedures. And so what I'll show you now is this article which explains these documents. So this is called a list of required documents according to NIS2. You can see the link in the chat window. And what it does, it basically goes through each and every requirement from NIS2, and it basically suggests you which document you can actually use this to cover this requirement. So for example, members of the management bodies are required to follow training and must offer similar training to their employees. Usually you're writing a training and awareness plan for this kind of a purpose, right? So take a look at this article and you will see that this is something that gives you an example, gives you more details. Okay, Ariana says, the question from Ariana, the BCM in German NIS2 law requires a disaster recovery plan mechanism. What would you understand as a minimum required measures there? I didn't read actually German NIS2 law. I'm not sure if it is published yet because Germany has this as far as actually I didn't check, but in the last 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago, Germany still did not publish the federal NIS2 law. It might have published these local NIS2 law, which are relevant for particular states within Germany, but I'm not sure if it published the federal NIS2 law. In any case, I'll check this out. I mean, if a particular requirement is not, I would say, clear enough in a particular law, then a couple of things can happen here. So, first of all, you might have the first law, which is like in Croatia's case, rather generic. And then what follows is typically a second regulation which specifies these things in more detail. So if you have the first law in a particular country generic, then wait for the implementing regulation, which will then give you much more details on how you need to implement this. If this regulation does not come, then the best thing is really to contact the cybersecurity authorities in a particular country and ask them for an opinion on how this needs to be implemented. Even if you do not receive such an opinion, and even if there is no local regulation, then you should actually follow ISO 27001 or ISO 27002, and I'll actually show you in a couple of slides on what is my opinion of using these standards for NIS2 compliance. So I would say that you can use actually these 3 steps when you need to comply with a particular requirement that is not very clear. Okay, good. Now, going back to my presentation. Good. Now, next thing that you have to do is set up supply chain security. This means that not only your company has to be compliant and implement cybersecurity, let's say, measures, you also have to enforce these cybersecurity measures on your suppliers, because otherwise you'll be in great danger, because, as you know, most of these companies do heavily depend on security of their suppliers. You have to set up assessment of cybersecurity effectiveness, so you have to find out how your cybersecurity is doing, and you can do this through monitoring, measurements, internal audits, and several other, let's say, ways to do it. And of course, you need to set up these incident notifications. So basically you have to define how these incidents are internally communicated, how they are communicated externally towards these competent authorities, and so on. And then you have to set up this continual cybersecurity training. So this is something that is mandatory, so you have to keep regular training and awareness programs. And so we'll share now a link with you for an article, how to perform training and awareness according to NIS2. So you can find more details in this article. Then you have to, start conducting these periodic internal audits, doing this management reviews. So basically management review is where the senior management takes into account all the reports about cybersecurity and then makes some conclusions and decisions on what needs to be done further. And of course you have to execute these corrective actions, so fix the problems that you're having in cybersecurity. So generally these are the 16 steps that you should follow. Again, no matter which local country you're in, no matter which law you have to comply with. Now I'll show you a couple of products actually that can help you with the implementation. So let me switch the screen. So basically what we did was develop this NIS2 documentation toolkit. So it's a set of documents that helps you comply with not only NIS2 directive, but also all of these local laws and regulations. So basically this is a set of documents that is divided in folders. And as you can see here, we have these folders, which are more or less aligned with the 16 steps that I explained you. So you first start with the management support and the project plan, and then initial training, top level policy, and so on. And for each of these, we created these documents here. So for example, let's say I want to write the risk management methodology. I click this document here, and then it takes me through a wizard, which helps me fill out this particular document. So it already suggests me the name of the person to approve the document, the confidentiality level, person in charge of coordinating risk assessment and treatment. Let's say I don't want CISO, let's say that I want a risk officer. Okay, and then I move on next. And as you can see, it already suggests all of these job titles. This is because I already used this wizard before, and then it actually automatically suggests me the most likely persons actually to be in charge of anything that is important in your company. So this way you actually speed up the writing of these documents. Anyway, let me show you how this works. When I come to this last question, I simply click download, and then I'll be able to open the document. And there you go. This is the document which I created. As you can see, it already uploaded the logo. Of course, this is a test logo, so this is something that is uploaded automatically. It inserts all the information from whatever I have written. So John Doe, if you remember, this is something that I entered through the wizard. And there you have the full text of the document. So you can see the table of contents. And here you can see reference documents. So this is NIS2, CIR, and so on, and the full text here. So what are the principles of risk management? What is the process? And you see here, risk management is implemented with risk assessment table. The risk assessment process is coordinated by a risk officer. And this is also the job title that I entered through this wizard. And of course, you also have these comments here, which actually help you further customize the document. Because once you download this document on your local disk, you can do whatever you want with it. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'll just show you that, of course, this is already available for several countries. So let me switch, for example, to NIS2 toolkit. Let's say, okay, here it goes. So this is a NIS2 toolkit for Belgium. It's obviously in French. We also have a version in Dutch. And you have, the same thing, all the same documents, not the same documents. These are the documents that are adapted for local NIS2 law in a particular country. But basically it works the same. So again, you have this methodology. If I open this, you will of course see the same questions, but they're here in French. So this is something that works, of course, that we are creating for each and every country. So we covered 7 or 8 countries already, and so we will of course cover all the 27 countries as they publish their local laws and regulations. So you have in this comment section, you have the link. You can open it up and see more details, and you can also see this. We'll send you now a link to a YouTube video which explains in more detail how this works. Okay, second thing that I wanted to show you is this company training academy. This is also our product, and basically it shows you, it helps you build NIS2 training and awareness programs. So here you can actually see this lessons library, and when you filter this out, I can filter it out by NIS2 and apply filter, and then you will see several videos here on specifically for NIS2, like, you know, certification and standardization authorities, applicability, cybersecurity requirements, and so on. And then you can see actually what is specifically what articles this is specifically related to. You can also see these cybersecurity awareness videos. So several of these videos here. Now the most interesting here is this how you set up a new training. So basically you select a framework like NIS2, and then it will automatically suggest you videos for a particular target group, because you're not going to show the same videos for, let's say, senior management and to, I don't know, IT employees. So let's say that I want to NIS2 training and awareness for the management for the program for members of the project team. Click continue. I define the country, you know, the title and so on, language. And by the way, you can actually select from several languages here. So if you're in France or in, let's say, Belgium, you can select French or Dutch and so on. Then click continue. And then it already suggests you what lessons you should actually go through. And it mixes NIS2 with cybersecurity awareness. So you will have both NIS2 and cybersecurity awareness here. So for example, NIS2 policy on information security, but also business continuity and so on. And most of these videos are around 5 to 10 minutes. And what it does, actually, when you click continue, you define how often these people you want to see, how often you want people to see this. So let's say that you want the people to see this once per week, let's say on Fridays. And then click continue, and then you simply enter email addresses of all the people that you want to attend this training. Once you enter these, once you actually start this program, then this training platform will start sending emails to all of these employees, asking them to go through these videos. And once they actually solve these tests, then you will actually know exactly if they really paid attention or not. So it's very easy to set this up. Anyway, now I'll send you this link. You see actually link in the chat window where you can find out more details about this, and we will also send you now the link to this YouTube video, which explains also how you can actually set up this NIS2 training for critical infrastructure companies. Okay, going back to my presentation. I see a question from Dorin. Is the NIS2 consultant toolkit also available in Romanian? Has it been updated to Romanian legislation? So yes, we have a localized version of Romanian NIS2 toolkit, so you can actually find it in Romanian, which is adapted for the Romanian NIS2 law. And there is also a consultant version for any of these toolkits, including the Romanian version, where you can actually use these templates for your clients if you're a consultant. So if you want to use this, of course, by all means, you can contact us and we will give you the price. All right, now let's move on to how you can actually use 27001 and 27002 for NIS2. So first of all, as you've seen, NIS2 is not specific on how to implement cybersecurity. It encourages the use of international standards. It does mention 27000 series in the preamble, but not in the main part of the directive. And it does map very well with these articles 20 and 21. So if you remember the articles 20 and 21, they are generic, but ISO 27001 very nicely, I would say, helps you with the implementation of these. Now, 27001 does not provide enough guidance for Article 23, which is about incident reporting. And I would say not ISO 27001, but 27002, which is a standard for, this is the guidance for the implementation, is much better choice if you actually have to comply with this CIR 2024-2690 and for local NIS2 laws. And by the way, what I did not mention when I was showing you this NIS2 toolkit, when we created this NIS2 toolkit, we took 27001, 27002, and then added all of these other requirements on top. So requirements from this CIR and also requirements from local laws and regulations. So 27002 is much better if you want to do this on your own, much better, I would say, path to comply with these local laws and regulations. All right, now let's move on to suppliers. There is very often a question if suppliers need to be compliant with NIS2, and the answer is no, they do not have to. Now, let me show you through this table who exactly needs to comply with what. So let me just check something, I'm sorry. Yeah, so there is a link that we didn't share with you, so we'll send you now this link to this article, how to implement NIS2 cybersecurity measures mapping with 27001. So this is something that will help you with this mapping thing. Now let's show you, explain you this dilemma. So when you speak about critical infrastructure companies, they need to comply with NIS2 directive and local NIS2 laws. This is clear. When you speak about critical digital infrastructure companies, of course, they need to comply with the NIS2 laws, NIS2 directive, local NIS2 laws, but also with this CIR 2024-2690. So this is only for digital infrastructure companies. Again, this is not applicable to, I don't know, water utilities or something like this. Now, if you are a supplier that sells products or services to critical infrastructure companies, then you do not need to comply with NIS2 laws, then you do not need to comply with CIR, but you do need to comply with any security clauses in the agreements that you have signed with a company that is in the NIS2 scope, okay? So let's say that you are a supplier to a telecom company in a particular EU country. In this case, you are a supplier, and anything that is written in any security clauses that you have in an agreement with such a telecom company, this is what you have to comply with. On top of this, you also have to comply with security standards like 27001, because according to NIS2, suppliers must comply with a standard. It doesn't say which one. It does say that it's about security, so it needs to be some security standard. So it could be ISO 27001, or it could be a standard, let's say, from ENISA's. ENISA is this cybersecurity agency, European cybersecurity agency, and they have their own cybersecurity, let's say, standards, and basically they are developing this cybersecurity certification scheme. So you could go also with any of these standards. So 27001 or something else, this is what the suppliers need to comply with. Now, if you are another company meaning that you are not a critical infrastructure company, that you are not a supplier to these critical infrastructure companies, okay, you still have to comply with security clauses in agreements with whatever buyers you have, and you can comply with security standards if you want. There is no obligation for such a company. Okay, so I hope that this now explains what exactly these suppliers to critical infrastructure companies need to comply with. So they have to comply with, they do not have to comply with NIS2 or NIS2 laws. They have to comply with only these security clauses and a particular security standard. Okay, let me see. Okay, I don't think we have anything to share with you here in this slide, so let's skip this and go with the next slide. Now let's see what are the greatest challenges. I'll go through this very quickly because we are almost running out of time. So one of the challenges that I received through email from you, and by the way, thank you for sending these emails, is how to ensure authenticity of the data, how to implement it and prove it. So first of all, NIS2 doesn't specify anything about authenticity of the data, and from most of the laws, local laws that are published based on NIS2, I didn't really see any requirement there. But theoretically, you can basically ensure authenticity of the data by, if this data is created internally, then you have to define exactly, who creates this data, who edits this data, what are the, let's say, rules for doing this. And of course, you also have to authenticate these users so that you know exactly who is working on the data. If you have data from the outside, external data, then you of course have to, let's say, introduce methods on how you basically verify that this data is correct. So very generic, I mean, very theoretically, this would be in general the way to approach the authenticity. Okay, is the full scope of NIS2 applicable to us or only part of it? So I was showing you this table of what are the 18 sectors that need to be compliant with NIS2. So if you are in any of these 18 sectors, then NIS2 laws will be fully applicable to you. So there is no partial, let's say, approach to it. Either you have to be compliant fully with it, or you do not have to be compliant. So there is no, let's say, midway there. Okay, challenge in many small and medium-sized businesses, there is often no clear separation of roles, which makes the formal designation of responsibilities under NIS2 difficult. Well, NIS2 is applicable to companies of more than 50 employees, right? And if you do have, companies above 50 employees, then you do typically have, roles, at least some roles that are, I would say, rather specific. So you will typically have, I don't know, a person in charge of IT. You might not have, let's say, a person in charge of security. But if you have like a chief technology officer, then this person can be, let's say, serve as a part-time CISO, so chief information security officer. Or you can actually hire an expert who can be your vCISO, so virtual CISO, who can actually work part-time as an outsider for your company. So this is the way for you actually to let's say, overcome this problem of not having a security officer. For the other roles, if when you want to designate internal auditor, you can simply select one person that is not in a conflict of interest that can perform internal audits. Again, this is not a full-time job. This is a part-time job. So I would say in most cases, it's I would say pretty easy to define, who needs to do what, even if you don't have, let's say, full-time jobs for these people in smaller companies. Okay, cost of the project, they get enough budget. So yes, it's very often hard to get a budget, but what you have to explain to your senior management that if you don't have to comply, you will pay fines. And these fines are usually much bigger than the cost of the project itself. So basically, this is the way to get things moving. And yeah, I mean, this is something that you simply have to do and present. In one of these articles that are published on our website, you also see the fines. These fines go up to a couple of million euros. And it's the cost of this project is far lower than a couple of million. And staff resistance to change. Yeah, so this is also a problem very often, but if you have this kind of a training program, like I was showing you in this company training academy, then it's I would say much easier to get the commitment from people, because people like learning through videos, especially if they are short, right? And this is why we made these videos short, so that it doesn't take too much time. So if they have to go through a video of, let's say, 5 minutes once a week, then this is not something that they will resist to, but they will start appreciating what security is and what is their role in security. All right, so let me go through a small conclusion, and then I'll go through any of your remaining questions. So NIS2 will be a challenge for most companies, but if you plan this whole project properly, then it can be done, I would say, more easily than expected. And of course, for that purpose, you can use Advisera's NIS2 toolkit and NIS2 company training academy. Okay, we'll also share now with you a link with our product expert, and he will be able to show you the details of how this toolkit works, how this training academy works. And by the way, these links that we've shared with you for the toolkit and for this company training academy, you can actually open a free trial account and test how everything works. So you can do this free trial. You can also schedule this call with our colleague to show you a free demo. It's both ways are possible. All right, now let's move on to the Q&A session. And by the way, I know that we are already on the top of the hour, so we'll need probably some 5 to 7 minutes to finish the webinar. So if you can stick for, let's say, 7 minutes more, this would be great. So let me, you can start sending your questions through this question pane. And just before I start answering these questions, a couple of notes. First of all, feel free to reach out to me directly, and you can contact me directly through my email address, and you'll see email address on the screen now. And second thing, you can follow me on LinkedIn and YouTube. On LinkedIn, I regularly publish latest updates about cybersecurity frameworks, including NIS2 and ISO 27001. So if you want to stay up to date, please start following me on YouTube. Second thing, if you want to watch videos about NIS2 and other cybersecurity frameworks, then take a look at my YouTube profile. And you can also, if you're a consultant, then you can take a look at this Secure and Simple podcast. And this is where I actually interview other consultants on what made them successful. So if you're a consultant, if you want to learn from other successful consultants, then this is a very good source for you. And there is also one episode about unlocking business value from NIS2, and take a look at this episode because it specifically talks about NIS2 compliance. Okay, and finally, next announcement is that my next webinar will be on next Wednesday, and it will be about how to use ISO 22301 business impact analysis for DORA and NIS2. And I'll show you how to calculate this RTO and RPO during using the BIA questionnaire, and you will see also these links for registering for webinars in the chat window now. All right, now let me see if there are any questions came in. So I have a question from Diana. I'm a law student and I have my cybersecurity exam tomorrow. Okay, good luck. In the context of ransomware attacks, how does NIS2 help with prevention, mitigation, and response to the incidents and the underlying cybersecurity vulnerabilities? Well, I hope this is not really an exam question because I shouldn't be giving you the answers to the exam. But in any case, NIS2 does not really mention ransomware, to be honest. And if we speak about these NIS2 laws and regulations, they basically define various cybersecurity measures which altogether actually help you prevent these kind of incidents, because it's not enough that you set up only, let's say, a firewall, because the attackers will find some other ways to actually penetrate your network. So the point is that all of these security measures together, and typically you can classify them as, let's say, IT security measures, physical security measures, people security measures, let's say legal security measures. If you actually, I would say, stack them up or combine them all together, then you have a much lower chance of something bad happening. Okay, good. It seems that I answered all the questions during the webinar, so I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. Good, so then let me wrap up the webinar. Just a few words. Another question from Bob. Where in the parent regulation does it state that only certain articles apply? I'm not sure what you mean by parent regulation, but NIS2 as a top level directive, it doesn't really say that only certain articles apply. So basically everything is applicable. Athanasia asks, we are a software company that provides VMS solution developed by us along with related services. Do we have to comply with NIS2? You should take a look at this article that we have written regarding this, regarding the who needs to comply with NIS2. But from what I'm seeing, if you are not a managed service provider, and if you're not a managed security service provider, if you do not belong to any of these, then I don't think that your company needs to comply with NIS2. All right, so as I mentioned, this 1 hour webinar was really too short to go into details on, how to implement cybersecurity and how to write documents, these kind of things. And of course, for that purpose, you can, test these this documentation toolkit, this training platform. You can play around and really see how this works. And regarding the PDF presentation deck, so in about 10 minutes, we will publish the links for you to download the PDF presentation deck on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So if you have joined through LinkedIn and YouTube, you should simply stay on the same page where you're watching the webinar now, and then go to this comment section. So again, in 10 minutes in the comment section, we will publish links for downloading the presentation deck, but we will also publish all the links that we shared today during the webinar. So if you didn't manage to open all of these links, then you will see them also in comments. If you joined this webinar through Zoom, then we will send you all of these links, including the link for the presentation deck through the email, and you'll receive this email by tomorrow morning. Okay, and finally you'll see a link for a short survey. So it's very short and only 3 questions, and I would appreciate if you have time to answer this poll. It will give me a feedback on how I'm doing on these webinars. And this would be all. Thank you very much for your participation, and I hope you have enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day.